Okay, so this is the autonomic varicosities. So in this case, you're basically going to get the swelling. So your synaptic vesicles are going to go where you get these like this swelling area, and this is where your neurotransmitters are going to be released, and they're actually going to be responsible for sending signals through to various neuroreceptors. So it's going to be a little bit different than our normal synapses, compared to where you just have that point, and then you have it engroved in that sort of area, right? And I'll show you a picture where the normal synapses looks. Okay. Okay. So you basically have the swelling. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So the swelling is where your synaptic vesicles are going to be released at, and then so they're going to be able to sit there and provide the neurotransmitter to each of these receptors that are in this area. So it's like a very wide area that you're going to sit there and have the swelling occurring at, and then it's going to be able to sit there and provide an extended length of stimulation than what you get in the case of just your synaptic vesicle component. So if we take a look here, so down here we see a normal synapses. Okay, so where you actually have that terminal end, and so instead of the swelling in the middle, right here, these guys are just at the axon itself, and then in this case, it's like in the middle of the axon, and you just got that swelling region. Okay, so that's in the case of the somatic pathway, and then in the case of the autonomic pathway, you have that swelling joint. Okay. Okay, and if you kind of think about the effectors, so the receptors that you're populating in the case of the autonomic response, you're going with your smooth muscles and things to that extent, where here we're working on our skeletal muscles. So the ones that we're controlling, by nature, are skeletal muscles. Those guys, we have those terminal responses, where the other one, the smooth muscles, the ones that we're not necessarily controlling, the involuntary responses. So those are going to be like, sorry, I don't know why it keeps doing that. Those are going to be kind of like the natural reflexes occurring, right? Without us knowingly doing, okay? And so this here is basically a referred pain chart. So typically when we're having pains in certain regions of our body, it kind of also tells us what's happening, right? So up here, if we're having pains up in our shoulder, our upper shoulders, and chest, upper neck, and shoulder area, then that's going to be associated with the diaphragm. If we're having pain in our spleen, that's going to be associated with our left-hand shoulder. If we're having pain with our heart, that is going to be associated with our right-hand side. Our arm, like if you're having a heart attack, which is often you feel it in your arms.
Or left hand.
What was that?
The left side, though, right? That's the left side of the body.
No, it would be the right hand. No, the right hand side. So your heart is located. Let's see. Your heart is located on your left, right?
Yeah.
But the pain that you feel is going to be on the right hand side. So when your right arm, when you start feeling pain in your right arm, then that's associated with you having a heart attack rather than in your left. So it's the opposite. So my heart is located on my left hand side. When I put my hand over my heart, right? Left hand side, this side, right? So my heart's located here, but the pain that I feel is located on the opposite.
Okay. And it runs along the pinky. Is that?
Yeah, yeah. So you'll start feeling, and so it's known that like particularly when you start feeling it in like a ring area, so that inner part of the arm, your chest, and so like think about when you're feeling heartburn, right? Where do you feel your heartburn at?
Mid chest.
Like mid, yeah. So that mid part right here. Okay. So, and then often you'll start feeling it on your right hand side. If it's severe heartburn, you'll start feeling it over here as well. Okay. And so, and that's partially the reason why people often mistake heartburn for like, I'm having a heart attack, right? Because the pain that you feel, yeah, it starts center, but you're starting to also feel it on your right hand side. When you get older, you'll feel it, and then you'll see what I'm talking about.
I've gotten heartburn already. I guess I'm already old.
But it's funny. It's like I never thought that, it's aging is something, because one day you're fine. The very next day, all of a sudden you're like, what the hell is that? It's just, it picks it up. So the point is that you're going to feel the pain that you feel, you're going to feel it in other areas, right? And not necessarily the areas that you would assume that you'd feel it at, because you assume your lungs and everything, you're feeling that up in your upper chest there. I mean, your upper, above your chest, your shoulder area, your neck area. You wouldn't assume that, right? Your heart, you'd assume that it would be on your left-hand side rather than your right-hand side, right? But there are ones that are comparable. When you have stomach aches, it's usually in the stomach, right? And so the pains that you feel are typically in the areas where they're located as well too. When you have trouble with your intestinal regions, it's going to be that upper abdomen that starts to feel,
So is this just this isn't necessarily an evolutionary mechanism that was meant to signal to us where we might be having issues? Because I mean, we would never associate it. I mean, if we knew that where our heart was situated, we wouldn't necessarily
assume no. Yeah,
we wouldn't necessarily associate pain in our right side with our heart.
That's right.
So is that just a byproduct of how our nerves are situated? How our glands?
It is a byproduct of how our nerve is situated, because if we sit there, we think about it, where we process, when we see things like that are on our left-hand side, it's being processed by our right side of the brain, right? Yeah. And so it's just the fact that the nerve is being situated in a different area. And so it is a byproduct. I don't think it's an evolutionary advantage. Yeah. Although there are certain ones that, if you notice, they are where they're supposed to be at. Like your bladder is where it's supposed to be at, right? Yeah. So the pain that you typically feel in your bladder is typically in where your bladder is located. And then also you kind of feel it in your butt, And so if you're having like a urinary tract infection, you'll have those issues and you'll start feeling it. Where your kidney, your kidney is like, it's up here somewhere, right? So then in the case of your kidney, you're feeling it in your lower abdomen, or very low abdomen. And then also right above your testes and stuff like that. So those are often associated with your kidney, right? And so where other things aren't, your urethra, your inner thigh is where you're going to feel the issues that are associated with your urethra. So that also kind of tells you the mechanism on which the nervous system is traveling as well too. Okay. Okay, so short and long reflexes. So this basically is just showing you a model of both that short and long reflex. And okay, so in the case of your long reflex, you know, we will see, you can kind of see here in the case of your long reflex, where you're traveling along that long axon to the receptor part. So this is your sensory. This is the receptor response that you're picking up. And then, so that's being delivered to the brain. And then as a result, then you're going to be sending the reflex that's going on. Then that's going to send that out to the peripheral ganglia. And so that's going to come from your brain and then also, or your spinal cord. And then that peripheral ganglia is going to be delivered to the part that you need to reflect on, or that you're going to need a response to, right? So, and in the case of the short receptor, right? So again, this is how you're going to get it. You're going to get it, receive a signal in the case of the short receptor, but then your periphery ganglia is going to send the response immediately. Okay, so so this could either be occurring from the central nervous system, or it could be occurring from the autonomic ganglia, or that periphery. So you could get a response, that long response that is coming from the central nervous system, the brain, the spinal cord, or you can get the one that's coming from the peripheral ganglia, right? So in the case of a lot of the autonomous responses, things that need to happen pretty fast. So those guys are going to go to that short reflex, where, you know, the other ones may go to the brain and say, okay, yeah, move your hand, right? And so depending on what's needed.
So, so did you say that all autonomic functions are short
No,
reflexes?
I'm not saying that all autonomic functions are short. I'm saying that some of the a large portion of our autonomic responses can be done short because they're taking into account that periphery, right? But you have there's the option of those long and short responses, and a lot of times, depending on the receptor or the stimuli that you're getting, you may end up using a short response because you need a quick action compared to if you need to go to the central nervous system and back to it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, for instance, if we think about the water running, right? We have hot water running. It usually takes us a minute to recognize, hey, it's hot. So that's a case of that long reflex, right? So we get that temperature. Oh, okay, I need to move my hand. And it takes us a moment. We feel that burn a bit before we actually move our hand, right? Where, let's see, in the case of, just trying to think, let me think of it, a good example here. Okay, in the case of, let's say, although that's pretty close to the area. Okay, let's say we feel a bug literally flying like right in our eye, right? So have you guys ever like ridden a motorcycle or anything like that without goggles or without sunglasses, or like an amusement park ride or something like that where you're going pretty fast and you're outside and a bug literally lands in your eye?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is it that you do initially, right? You don't sit there and think about it. And the first thing that you do is respond. Your eye starts to blink and water, right?
Mm.
And so that's an example of those peripheral nerves responding fast and not sending that signal, because you're not thinking about that signal, you're automatically responding. Your eye starts to water, you're blinking it very fast. That's all That's all that autonomic system. Okay, where that the concept of using the skeletal muscle to sit there and move your hand out of the way, that's going to be using that long reflex compared to the short reflex. Are you guys getting it, or is it kind of?
Does muscle recruitment have anything to do with the long? Because
Yes.
certain so smooth muscle tends to respond more, like not better, but
That's right.
with the short, right?
That's right. Exactly. Okay.
What's the relationship between the muscles and short and long reflex?
So like your skeletal muscle, so the recruitment of your skeletal muscle typically is the longer reflex. So the recruitment of those, the use of the smooth muscles, right, and your cardiac muscles, those are going to be more anonymous. I'm sorry, autonomic. Okay, is that better? You guys clearer understanding?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so the biggest difference is to recognize that the short is going to require the central nervous system. It means you have to go all the way to the spinal cord or to the brain. And then the long is going to the spinal cord or to the brain, and the short is just the periphery. So it's going to be a closer and faster response in that case. Okay. Okay. So like somatic reflexes, and it's kind of in that name, somatic reflexes are going to require the central nervous system. So all of those are going to be, are they going to be long or are they going to be short?
I mean long.
They're going to be long. Okay. And then, things like digestion, right? So just general digestion, you just ate something. Are you going to sit there and go all the way to the brain to sit there and say, okay, I just ate something, I need you to digest it? Or is that going to be something that's going to be happening?
It's a short reflex.
Okay. Okay, so the next thing we want to think about, we have to have, okay, so there has to be control of these systems, right? And we need to sit there and set up a balance. So there needs to be a homeostasis that's going to be associated with the different reflexes that we're getting, right? And here, this is basically looking at the autonomic control of the pupillary size. Okay, so in the case of dim light, so we get the light comes in, we get that signal that the light is dim, and so our pupils are gonna dilate, right? And then so they're gonna be big because we're trying to pick up more light signal and everything like that. Okay, so in that case, that one is going through the central nervous system, right? And then it's going to be delivered from that central nervous system to the ganglia, the cervic ganglia. And then as a result of that, we're going to send off the transmitters to sit there and cause our pupils to sit there and dilate. Okay. Now, in the case of a bright light, so those guys, that one is going to be, it's going to be recognized by the what is it, editor Westfeld nucleus, and so This guy's going to be part of the autonomic nervous system, or the parasympathetic neuron. And so the signal is going to be sent from that to sit there and say, okay, now we need to sit there and constrict. So in this case, this one is going to be, this one here is going to be this one is going to be a long, consider it a long reflex. This guy is going to be considered a short reflex. And so, and if you actually think about it, so if you're sitting in the dark, right, and your eye actually starts to dilate as you sit in the dark, but it takes a moment. Does it happen instantaneously? Like when you guys, so have you guys ever just like all of a sudden turn off the light or the lights go out? Can you see everything instantaneously?
No, everything is pitch black.
Yeah. So initially everything's pitch black, and it takes a moment for your eyes to adjust. So it takes a moment for your eyes to dilate so that you can actually pick up some of those faint cases of light that you can sit there and make things out, right? Where in the case of if somebody put a bright light to your eyes immediately, your pupils immediately constrict, right? And so that also kind of lets you know about the response, right? So the type of reflex that we're getting. Does that make sense or not?
Yes.
Okay, so now this process, right? You sit there, you think about it, it has to be controlled, right? And it has to have some type of balance, okay? Because you're kind of competing with the somatic reflexes as well as the autonomic reflexes, right? And so you need to sit there and find that homeostasis between those two competing responses. Okay. Okay, so this just basically this is the a schematic of the pupillary reflex pathway. And so in the case of you're having light shined in, so then your light is being shined in, so you get the light signal. So then it gets delivered to the actual potential of the right eye. And then the left particular nuclei, and then that's gonna go, then that's gonna send the response to that particular, it's gonna send a response to the particular nuclei was gonna be stimulated on both sides, and then the light that was received on the right eye is going to sit there and respond, but your other eye is also going to be sent that response as well. Okay, so it's going to pick up, your other eye is going to dilate as a result of it as well too. Okay, so then in this case you're going to have potentials being perceived on both the right eye and the left eye, because, and then in that case it's going to cause both of those eyes to constrict, because your right eye picked up that signal. Okay. Okay. Okay, so this here is just a schematic of the fiber tracts of the central autonomic system. Okay, so the hypothalamus is it's basically the central control of the autonomic function, and so it's going to be receiving inputs from the brain or the central cerebral structures, and then also it's going to be projecting signals to the spinal cord and then the brain stem that's going to be regulating the sympathetic and the parasympathetic inputs. So in this case, it's going to kind of regulate that fight or flight response, as well as the more just rest, digest and rest response. Okay, and so the hypothalamus is, it's crucial for kind of getting you kind of hyped up when you're on adrenaline and things like that. So, and so it's going to be essential to have this guy under strict control. And so again, you're going to need homeostasis to sit there and maintain this control. And so this guy, the hypothalamus, basically regulates both those nervous, your nervous system responses, as well as your endocrinic system responses. So this is where two of your systems are gonna, well, which happens quite a bit in our body, where two systems kind of have an organ that's responsible for kind of regulating both, let's say in this case, the nervous system, and then also the endocrinic system, which is used for signaling a lot of cases, and then also forming those action potentials at the various sites. Okay, so when we think about the outputs that are going to be coming from the hypothalamus, it's going to be along two sides. It's going to be on the dorsal longitudinal, and then it's also going to be on the medial forebrain. Okay, so medial forebrain and the dorsal longitudinal. So those guys are going to be the main pathways that this guy is going to be signaling through. Let's see. Okay, so this here is just a schematic of the lymphatic lobe, and so this can be involved in our emotional response, and also parts of memory. And so, like in the case of us getting, let's say, anxious, for like taking a test, or let's say that you got beat up by the bully the other day, right? Anything that kind of deals with that. Your amygdala is going to be the guy that kind of deals with that. So your anxiety or anything that's kind of scarring or post-traumatic stress, something along those lines. That's the guy that's going to be. What was that?
That's not the same as fight or flight, is it?
Well, this deals with that fight or flight, but this is just one component that is controlled by it. So,
Okay.
So in this case, it's not necessarily the fight or flight, it's the memory of it. It's the emotional response to an event. Right? So it could be something that isn't necessarily fight or flight, but okay. So, like when we get anxiety for taking a test, right? We start getting sweaty, we get nervous, we can't think straight, and stuff like that, right? So we get that little bit of anxiety. So in terms of the emotional response that goes with that, this guy's response. But we have that whole sympathetic nervous system that we had talked about earlier. That guy is responsible for that fight or flight response. There's that whole nervous system that we're responsible for that. This part only it kind of controls the emotions that are. Okay, so this guy's going to be like I said, anxiety.
No, it only deals with your emotions.
Yeah, so this deals with our emotions. Now, they also send signals to the other guys so that they'll respond to our emotions, right? So you're getting signals that are being sent. But this guy is going to be, again, it gets those the emotional components going, and those emotional components are sending signal for the whole fight and flight pathway. So it's all integrated together, right? You can't have the emotions without the response. You know what I'm saying? Or the
yes.
Okay. So this guy is going to basically send signals to the hippocampus. Yeah. And want to make sure I'm not telling you because incorrect. No, sorry. The hypothalamic. It sends signals to the hypothalamic nuclei, and then that sends signals out to stimulate the sympathetic pathway. Okay, so then that gives us that fight or flight response. Okay. Okay. Come on now. Okay, so then this just basically shows us the autonomic connections between the heart and the blood vessels. And so we have nicotinic receptors that are going to basically be found on those autonomic ganglia. And so so you have those nicotinic receptors, but you're also going to have things that are going to be, or specific connections that are dedicated to cardiovascular in this case. And so that concept of rest and digest. So in other words, we need to be sure that that guy is constantly stimulated. So your cardiovascular are not going to be in direct competition with the things that are going to be stimulated by nicotine, right? So you're going to have independent stimulus. So even though we know that, let's say you're smoking cigarettes, right? You're a big cigarette smoker. And we know that does affect our cardiovascular system, our lungs in those cases. That effect isn't gonna, it's not gonna stimulate the normal function of the cardiovascular system, because it has things that are very specific and they're not gonna be stimulated. You're not gonna have that cross connection, okay? Where it's dampening the signal to tell you that, hey, you need to keep the heart pumping, or anything like that. So you're going to keep those things going, even though that you could get stimulated, and that stimulation can affect other components, but not necessarily just that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're saying you can't directly affect heart rate by nicotine stimulation?
Yes, but you can affect blood pressure by nicotine, right? But you're not necessarily affecting the heart's rate.
So does that apply to other stimulants as well, like caffeine, amphetamine, things like that? Does it have to be processed the same way in order, you know what I mean? Because it seems like those things fucking, excuse my language, but those things shoot your heart rate up almost immediately, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, and they do, but typically they're affecting other systems, right? So like in the case of nicotine, it actually affects the sympathetic system, not the parasympathetic system, right? So then it affects that by affecting blood pressure. So the nicotine receptors that are kind of dictating the flow of blood, so it's affecting that. So it can affect those systems, but it doesn't. We have. How do I put this? Okay.
So the heart, the part of our nervous system that affects heart rate, that has receptors on it for caffeine and stuff, and that is that why maybe?
Yeah. So yes. So we do have, there's certain drugs that are going to be parasympathetic, and then they're going to be meaning that they're going to be able to sit there and affect that part of the nervous system. And then there are other drugs that aren't, right? And so nicotine is one of those guys. It's found in the autonomic ganglia. The receptors are found all over the autonomic ganglia, but it's not going to affect the heart, because the heart, I should say, can say it's not going to affect the heart. It's not going to affect the connection, right, of that response. That response is still able to do what it's supposed to do, because it's not affecting. It's going to affect other responses, right? And so then it actually is more associated with, the nicotine will be more associated with a response that's affecting the systematic blood pressure, rather than affecting the autonomic system. Okay.
So then it increases our blood pressure, and that's why our heart works a little bit harder, or?
And it pushes harder, yes.
Yeah.
In that case. And
shit, that makes it way more dangerous, though.
That's right. and yeah, because it's pushing that fight or flight response. And a lot of drugs that you're particularly were talking about, right? So the amphetamines and caffeine, and so they actually will affect the sympathetic pathways, that fight or flight, and so it causes us to kind of get in those extra modes. So like, for instance, the methamphetamines, a person that is on meth, right? So that's taking a lot of meth, they basically, what is it called? Meth rage, that's associated with, okay? So when a person gets really high on meth and they've kind of exceeded that point, they have this anger that's really associated with it. And part of that anger is because it's stimulating the sympathetic pathway, fight or flight. So it turns on that flight part of it. They want to fight. In that case, and rip off your face, or physically hurt you because they're looking at it. Their body's telling them, because of that high that they're getting, it's just turning on all of these signals. So all of those receptors are stimulating this pathway that's just causing them to just lose control in a sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a similar effect with other stimulants? Does it stimulate the brain the same way?
There are a few of them that can do that. Yes. And you'll also find that there are byproducts that can also cause that. Like there are levels of alcohol that you start to produce certain byproducts. And so you'll find that certain individuals that are prone to get into bar fights and stuff that are heavy drinkers, right? And so there are other byproducts that will be generated as a result of processing the alcohol, and that will end up causing very similar responses. So yes. Good question though. Okay. Okay, so this is an example. So in this case, this person's pupil is dilated as a result of taking drugs. So you know how like a lot of times a cop will pull you over and then they'll flash their lights in your eyes and stuff like that and see if your pupils constrict or dilate, right? And so we also have various receptors in there that will also certain drugs that will stimulate and then will mimic that same process of dilation in our eyes. So okay, and so let's see. Let me give you an example of some of the drugs that you guys are familiar with. So we have the phenylephrine, and so it's actually known to cause your pupils to dilate when you're taking it, and it is it's an adrenergic agent. Or it can compete with the adrenergic receptor, binding to the adrenergic receptor. So cocaine, also it actually interferes with dopamine uptake at the synapses, and it causes an increase in the adrenergic function. Caffeine.
Psilocybin.
What was that?
Does psilocybin do the same thing?
I'm not sure about psilocybin. I have to look that up. But caffeine also does something very similar to that. And so it can also, so in the case of, there's certain drugs that they'll put a little bit of caffeine in, like Excedrin and stuff like that, to kind of help with the increase of the adrenergic, so that you're getting that response. So caffeine is actually, let's just say, it's an antagonist to adenosine, the adenosine receptor. And so it actually is going to repress the adrenergic function. Let's see.
So then it shrink. So then does it shrink your pupils?
So in the case, that one actually is going to cause people to do the opposite. Yes. So you'll get a little bit of shrinkage going on. In theory, if you're hyped up, if you're really hyped up on caffeine. But in terms of the dosage that we typically use, it's not going to have too much of an effect. We'd have to get into those exceeding dosage. A person that's really, really hyped up on caffeine, been drinking coffee all day, and maybe take one of those caffeine pills, or a Red Bull, a couple of Red Bulls and stuff like that. So when we look at drugs, they're going to be categorized if they're going to be affecting the sympathetic pathway. So there are two types. So you have symptomonic, basically meaning that they mimic one of the drugs in the pathway, or they're going to be symptolytic, which basically means that they're going to either they're going to cut or break down or inhibit, one of the response. Okay, so let me say.
So
What?
So you're gonna have to type it because you're breaking up a little bit.
You need for it to be affected either.
Can you repeat that, please?
Drugs you need that for certain drugs you need a large amount of that same drug to be affected in either a positive or negative way.
Oh, so you're saying, okay, so yeah, of course. So like for instance,
Okay.
caffeine, right? So what happens is if we have a little, like very little caffeine, right? So very little caffeine it's not gonna push us over a threshold, right? So remember when we talked about those action potentials and stuff like that, and you have to get over a threshold. Very little caffeine isn't gonna push us over a threshold. Like, so chocolate, natural chocolate has a little bit of caffeine in it. And like natural coffee beans, natural chocolate beans will have a little bit of caffeine in it, but it's not enough to kind of push us over that threshold. Now, if we have chocolate and then we throw in some more caffeine into that system, let's say we have a chocolate covered espresso bean and we eat that. So that might push us to that level where we got that little bit of an energy, right? And then, but if we exceed that level, it can get to the point where it can have a more detrimental effect where we actually become slow and sluggish as a result of the caffeine as well. So, and if you sit there, you think about it, what's happening in one case is that you're stimulating the receptors, right? And the lowest case, you're stimulating a little bit of the receptors, too little that you're not pushing over the threshold to get the actual potential to continue to go. One case, you're getting the action potential to continue to go, and then so you're getting the response as a result that you jolted a little bit. And then in another case, you basically saturated the receptors, and then your body's trying to respond to that. So too much is open, too many things are happening that you're causing it to kind of wear itself out. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so you can get to the point where you can get so much of a certain drug and it can saturate all the receptors, and so you're not getting anything as a response to that.
Okay, makes sense.
This is mnemonic. Okay, so 2 types of drugs. Okay, so
What was that second one? Simpa what? Sympatholytic and Simpa what?
mnemonic.
Mnemonic.
Yeah, so you're mimicking. Yeah. One is mimicking and one is. And if you guys take a look, there is in your book, there's a nice little table of various drugs and their categories. And so you could also have the same thing with parasympathetic, symphonemonic, and then parasympathetic, yeah. Okay, so this is a plant. It's known to well, it's called atropia. It makes, if you guys heard of belladonna or nightshade, people used to drink it, and then they start realizing that it can be deadly. And so often it's basically used, it causes your pupils to dilate, and so it'll give you bigger pupils. And so a lot of times people would use it for cosmetic purposes to make their pupils bigger. Used to be used a lot in witchcraft ceremonies and things like that. So. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are in nature that we could come across that causes the same effect ultimately. Questions? Okay. Well, that's chapter 15. We'll be going over chapter 16 and 17 on Wednesday. Chapter 16 is just some of the exams that we give to kind of neurological exams that we'll give. So it should be very straightforward and quick. So, okay, are there any questions? And then chapter 17 is the endocrine system. So is this the last class that a lot of you guys have to take for your degrees in biology and health sciences?
It's my last prereq before the PTA program.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to a PT
PTA, yeah. Well, the
Okay.
end goal is to be a physical therapist, but
yeah.
I'm going the physical therapist assistant route first because I got to make a living. So
Yeah. So what program? I mean, where is there a PTA?
College of the
degree?
Sequoias.
Yeah. Okay. COS. Okay.
COS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, now that you brought that up, you were talking about when the semester started, you said that we're gonna have to give you, do this like,
Career, yeah,
where we have to tell you what our next steps in preparation
Yeah.
for whatever career path we're gonna choose.
yeah, I'll be putting that up this week as well too, towards the end of the week, and then so you'll
Yeah,
have,
for me, well, for me, there's not a big process
Okay.
until after I actually get accepted into it.
Okay,
So I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna be a little bit too simplistic when it comes to me, you know, telling you my preparation or whatever.
yeah. No, it won't be, because that's the parts that most people are gonna go through, like, let's see. Like if you're going through the nursing program, first you gotta get accepted to the program, right? So I understand that, but
Yeah.
what are your plans? Okay, so you go, where are you gonna go? Have you looked at what are the things that were needed? Have you gotten all those needed, right?
Yeah.
And let's say, what if you don't get into that program? Is there another program? Do you have all of the courses that you need for that program? So, like, I believe that you need a plan and you need a backup plan. You should always have a plan and a backup, right? One way of getting a backup plan is, okay, so these are the 3 schools that have PTA programs. These 3 schools, they all need exactly the same thing, and it's easy, right? But a lot of times what you'll find is that one school will need this, one school will need that, and you don't have that. And so you're always going back to try to fix that one thing that you're missing because you didn't get into where you thought you were going to, right? And so if you kind of have it on a piece of paper, you got to have it planned out. So that first level, and then you're planning to go to become a PT, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, then what are the schools, and are you planning to stay in California? And if so, then is there a particular area? What schools would be best suited for you and your financial need, so again, I always say 3. At least 3 schools I'd always go through. And the way I select my schools, I always select the one that I feel that I know I can get into.
Yeah.
Definitely, pretty confident I can get into that one. The one that I want to get into. And then the one that is like, oh, that's a pipe dream. But, so then I
You gotta
plan to
shoot your
apply.
shot either way.
Exactly. So I plan to apply to all 3 of those schools. So I make an attempt to apply to all of those schools, at least those 3. And I make sure I have all the requirements that I needed for all those classes, And so make sure it's all the I's are dots, all the T's are crossed. Then in my next level, so what is it that I need to get into the PT program? What type of GPA? So then you go in knowing what you need rather than responding to it afterwards. Because a lot of times what we do is we go and say, I want to be a nurse. Okay, that's great. But there's thousands of people who want to be nurses, right? So what is it that I need? Have I taken all the classes? Am I on the right path? Okay. What programs are available? Which one that I know I can get into? Oh yeah, this one has a high rate of acceptance, or my GPA fits perfectly with this, or it's convenient because it's right up the road. This one is challenging, but and then what is it that I want to do after that? Am I going to be happy with just being a nurse? Or am I going to want to be a pediatric nurse? Or am I going to, get that specialization?
So you want us to plan like a decade in advance, huh?
Exactly, yeah.
Shit.
To at least think about it, right? Because we get into those situations and then we're making those seat of the pants decisions, very last minute, and which is fine because usually that's what ends up happening. And we say we're going to do this, and then we end up doing something entirely different.
Yeah.
Me, for example,
It's better to be prepared for it.
Yeah.
Than not. Yeah.
And then also you kind of know, like, I always believe in giving your 110%, right? And then that way, if you go in, give it 110%, you've done all the best that you could possibly do. Then, usually you're going to get that A and all that stuff, and you work towards it, right? So you always strive for the A, right? But sometimes you may mess up, or something may happen, or you know, and then you want to sit there, but you want to know, okay, is that mess up going to affect me badly? So if it is, maybe I should think about getting out of this class now, or, you know, taking a W here and replacing it later, you know, or, you know, so you want to weigh your options. So you want to be planning things, you know. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, so you guys know that, and I will be putting it up officially today. Your lab, you guys have lab 4, or exercise 4, which is perfect timing, the endocrine system. So, so start on that, and then we'll be doing the fish lab on Wednesday. So on Wednesday, you're going to need your fish, you're going to need caffeine, you're going to need a 16-ounce water bottle with water, and a 16-ounce water bottle without water, an empty one.
Are you gonna send a message?
Yep.
Just a reminder for what we need on Wednesday?
Yep, I'll put a full list up. Yep, I'm gonna put it, it'll probably come
So-
tonight.
So
So
for,
that- Yeah. What was that?
so for today on Mondays, lab, we're only gonna have a physio lab.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This upcoming lab that is due this Wednesday, I know
Yeah.
it's in total there's 9 labs, but you said that we're only responsible for 7. It's for lab 10.
Oh, lab 10?
Yeah, because I know for this one, for this lab 10, we had there's 9 labs, but you said that we're only responsible for 7.
Okay. That wasn't intentional, but since I said it, then that will be the case.
Yeah, so I just wanted to verify if you mean like, okay, we're only gonna do 7 and leave out 2.
It's funny because mine, there's only 7 activities. Are you talking about the skeletal muscle?
It's the nervous impulse in physio lab.
Okay, sorry. Yes. So that one was supposed to be 10. That was a typo. So only do 7 since I said 7. Damn it. Yeah, you're supposed to do them all,
Yeah.
but because the last part is kind of good. So I'll add those this week. Unless you've already done the 10.
So 7 for the one that's due Wednesday, correct? Is it
It's
due Wednesday?
7. No, it's 7 for, and so she's asking about the one last week because on the thing it
Oh
says
no,
that there was,
I'm asking for this week. I mean because this lab 10 is gonna be due this Wednesday, and that's the one that has 9. But you said that we're only gonna do 7. We're only responsible
yeah,
for 7.
and it was supposed to have 9. I mean, it was supposed to be 9. That was a typo. And then,
But now it's 7.
yeah, but now it's 7. Yes, because
Because
it
you
was a
dropped the ball
typo.
on that one.
Yes. So the one that's due this Wednesday, it's, yes. And then what we'll do for 4, we'll do the last 2. I'll have you guys do 7. 8, 9, and then the last one, and then that one isn't too long. Where am I lying? Let me look again.
There's only 4 in the next one.
4, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'll have you guys do the last 2 and the other. So I'll fix that. Sorry about that.
Okay.
That's what happens when I'm trying to do too many labs at once, so too many classes at once. Semester. Cannot wait till the semester's over.
What, we got another month left?
Yeah, less than a month now. Man,
Less
this
than a
month is flying by. I can't believe like next week will be the 12th. I'm like, God, I just blinked.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a challenge here. So and you'll have one more lab. The last one will be the alcohol lab with the fish, and then that'll be it. I was gonna do the alcohol and the caffeine together.
Yeah, it's probably not a good idea to do that
Yeah.
to the little guy's heart, huh?
I know, he just, push him over the edge there.
Yeah, we do that shit to ourselves probably
Exactly.
all the time, huh?
Yeah. Okay, so then I'll see you guys on Wednesday. And I'll be making the corrections, and I'll send an email to let you know the corrections.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, you guys have a good weekend.
You too.
I mean, a good week.
You-
Yeah, you too.
Yeah, I'm already ready to go to the weekend if you can't tell. Yeah.